Can I get a 3D printout of Kelly Brook?
Answer me this, answer me this.
What was all that about Rachel Lee Cook?
Answer me this, answer me this. Helen and Ollie, answer me this.
Here's a question from Chris from Oxford who says, my fiancé and I recently received an invitation to a wedding. Despite the fact that it's in Newquay, on bank holiday weekend, guaranteeing me at least 12 hours in a car, and they only gave us 3 weeks' notice.
Wow, you weren't even the second wave of invitees.
God.
Unless it's a shotgun wedding.
You know, well, so what? They've invited you to their wedding, Chris. The least you could do is put a smile on it. You sound like you're not going to be much of a laugh to have around at their wedding, even if you deign to go.
You sound like you've decided already not to enjoy it.
Exactly.
With that attitude, you won't.
Well, he says, I will be attending, albeit under duress.
No shit.
However, the invitation states, dress code for men, black tie and board shorts.
Half of your body is going to be a lot warmer than the other half.
That's true.
What are board shorts?
They're like what people in Home and Away wear when they're running up the beach with a surfboard.
Yes.
I can imagine, actually, this is the kind of thing Robert Downey Jr. would wear on the red carpet. Posh top half and then shorts.
Helen, answer me this. Should I turn up in this ridiculous mishmash of garments or treat the suggestion with the contempt I feel it deserves? It's not a suggestion, it's a dress code.
It's an order.
Exactly, it's a rule.
There's no latitude in that.
Everyone else is going to be dressed like a tit.
Yes, so you'd feel more of a tit, not dressed like a tit.
I mean, by all means, take your trousers in the car so that if other people have disobeyed, you can disobey too. But I think otherwise, why draw attention to yourself? It's like when I turned up at school on Mufti Day in school uniform, and I thought this is a kind of protest, but really, it was just dickishness. And I'm big enough to understand now that I was being a dick.
Wow, that seems like a major psychological event in your life, the way you're talking about it.
I was 12, though.
Yeah.
You're not 12, Chris. If you're talking about driving to Cornwall, you're at least 17. I've got an idea for Chris, which in a way is taking the theme even further. Wetsuit with a bow tie.
Presumably that's what the father of the bride is wearing. I mean, I do appreciate the irony here, I think we all do, that in trying to have this sort of informal beach look, they're actually imposing a rule which makes it harder to dress up than if they just said, wear casual beach clothes. You know, if they said, come dress for the beach, some people would wear board shorts, some people would turn up in flip-flops and normal shorts, but what they've done here is, whilst trying to make it look relaxed, because they've gone for a uniformly relaxed look, some people are going to have to go and buy board shorts, especially, just as you would have to go and buy white tie if they'd said that.
The fact is, you've agreed to go to this wedding, so shut up and go. Don't complain now, because what if you find yourself actually quite enjoying it? Then you'll look like an idiot. Whereas if you've been quiet and then it's worse than you and your fiancé expect, then you can bitch about it all the way home in the car.
The only problem is, I think, there is a certain type of man that looks good in board shorts, and that's the kind of man who looks good on a surfboard. And if you're not that kind of man, as I am not that kind of man...
Oh, you've got lovely calves, Ollie.
I actually have reasonably proportioned legs, Helen, yes.
They're very long and slender.
They are compared to the top half of me, but the problem is the top half of me remains the same.
But then you've got the dinner jacket on, so what's the problem?
In a way, it's the perfect outfit, yeah. I know someone who recently applied for a job as a lawyer at a cool new media internet company.
Oh, does that mean they have to wear a stupid dress code?
They were told by someone who works at the company, you've made a major error in submitting your LinkedIn profile, which has a picture of you wearing a suit. Because this is a cool new media internet company, we don't wear suits here. And now they're going to look at that and they're going to judge you on your photo. Isn't that a mad reversal of dress codes?
Some people have gone for a suited look because now so many executives wear casual clothes. Their kind of fun young hipster look is a suit. I mean, almost a P.V. Herman kind of look.
Exactly, that's exactly what's happened. Like this company, if you want to be an executive there, you have to dress like you're on work experience.
So he should have just worn a poncho on LinkedIn.
But surely, of all people, you want the lawyer to be wearing a suit. He's not going to turn up in court wearing flip-flops and board shorts, is he?
I mean, on jury service, I didn't even wear glitter nail polish to court because I thought that would seem a bit trivial.
Well, I think that's right, Helen. I think you do things properly.
I respect the legal process. Here's a question from Paul, who says, Ollie, answer me this. Why isn't Fred Flintstone thin, since he drives his car with his feet everywhere?
Because it's a cartoon, that's why. It doesn't make any sense that he wears a tie, even though he's basically wearing a dress.
Maybe his metabolism has slowed down. Maybe he doesn't drive that far. I mean...
Yeah.
Bedrock might be one of those towns where people drive to somewhere that is only a 5-minute walk away.
Well, very likely, because of course it's based on 1960s suburban America, isn't it? Where it's very much the case.
It's very car-centric, a lot of the town planning in America.
If his calorific intake exceeds his what is burning, even if he is exercising a lot, he might be healthy, but he might be overweight.
He'd be massive if he ate all those dino steaks and didn't go in the car. I mean, actually, maybe the car is the only thing that's keeping him in the relatively svelte condition he's in. Because the thing about Flintstone is that, you know, even though John Goodman played him in the film and everything, people think of him as fat. If you watch the cartoon, he's got a beer belly, but it's not. He's not obese, is he? And also, we don't know how the engineering of those cars works.
Yeah. Is the front wheel stone, though?
Well, this is
Because
it.
if he's propelling that is a weight.
Yes.
Well, only to get going. It could work like a flywheel after that.
But are there animals, for example, underneath the axle, as there are in many of the Flintstones creations?
Oh, what, like a tortoise that's powering things?
Is it effectively a power-assisted vehicle?
Oh.
You know,
Like one of those bikes with a little motor on.
yeah, so you see
Yeah.
his feet running along the bottom, you think, oh, he's doing well powering that. It might not be the only energy going into
Just
that.
as enhancing the motion.
Or maybe that's just like a rudder rather than the actual motor. It's just steering.
There was a German guy last year who built a replica of the Flintstones car on the chassis of a Volkswagen.
Which kind of Volkswagen?
I believe it was a Polo, Helen.
Well, that is a strong chassis.
And I appreciate your attempt at the banter.
Car chat.
It was it was amazing. Wooden frame, leopard print covers, did the whole thing.
What did he make the wheel out of, Ollie?
It was stone, I think.
Really? So
Or it
you
looked
got,
like stone.
you got one of those rollers that you use to flatten a cricket pitch
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something?
that kind of thing. Yeah,
Wow.
but you didn't power it with your feet. It actually had a 1.3 litre engine in it.
Cheat.
And he wasn't roadworthy. The German authorities said, "Guess what? You can't drive
No
that because
shit.
it doesn't have seatbelts or
Because it
windscreen
will
wipers."
destroy any road that it travels along.
And you'll probably fall out and run yourself over.
He takes it around German car shows nowadays.
We saw the Flintstones mobile as well, didn't we? At Cars of the Stars, now sadly defunct.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, but that was from the
Plasticky.
Flintstones sequel movie, wasn't it?
Not a strong film.
It's the one with they couldn't afford Elizabeth Taylor the second time, so I think they got Joan Collins.
Was Elizabeth Taylor in it the first time?
Was she Betty Rubble or somebody?
She was Flintstone's mother-in-law.
Oh, right.
Who did play Betty?
Betty was really pretty. I forgot how pretty
Who was? To be honest, as a 13-year-old, my entire attention was Halle Berry exclusively.
Was Halle Berry in it?
Oh yes.
Who was she playing?
Titty McTit.
I didn't know there were any Scottish characters in it.
Rosie O'Donnell played Betty Rubble.
Yes.
That's a miscasting.
No, I don't know. Not bad.
I should have given it to Holly Hunter.
You just say Holly Hunter because you'd like to see Holly Hunter in everything.
Maybe.
Who should have played Harry Potter? Holly Hunter. Oscar Schindler, Holly Hunter. Right, here's a question from someone who would prefer to remain anonymous, but we do have her email address, so don't cross us, lady. She says, Helen, answer me this. When is it appropriate to tell a prospective partner about my clitoral hood piercing?
Well, it really depends on context. At his mother's funeral. Probably later.
Yeah, time doesn't come into it then, does it? It's all about the situation. I've been single for the 18 months since I got it.
Coincidence?
Yeah, I wonder if there's a connection to that. Just nerves, maybe.
Waiting for it to heal.
And I'm not really sure how or when to tell him.
Well, if you don't tell him, he probably will find out.
think
Unless he
so.
can't find it.
Do I just wait for him to find it, she says, perhaps preempting that gag, and run the risk of it really not being something he's keen on?
Well,
you're not going to remove it if he's not keen on it, presumably,
No,
so
throw
fuck
it
him.
up. Yeah.
And, at that point, frankly, he's happy just to see anything.
would you ask him to get his penis pierced if you were not keen on it being unpierced?
Exactly.
You
yeah.
see?
Do I tell him preemptively, she says, and possibly ruin the surprise?
Well, you could tell him provocatively. You'd be like, well, I've got a piercing in a very special place, and you'll have to guess where.
Oh, that's good, yeah, if you specify piercing, because if you're like, when you get in my knickers, I've got a special surprise for you, he might be expecting a sandwich. Like, make it clear that it's a
Pant
piercing.
sandwich.
Yeah, that's what I'd like. He might be expecting that, and then it'll be disappointing. I'd not envisioned this issue, she says, when I decided to get it done.
Well, what were you envisioning?
Should I use a euphemism?
Can she not use the euphemism hood ornament?
Actually, some of them are the size of, like, car hood ornaments. I
Are
don't know if you
they?
see, some of them really like the Mercedes badge.
How many have you seen?
I've done a little bit of research online. Some of them are just absolutely enormous, and some of them are tiny, like little studs like you'd have in your ear.
Okay, so a lot of it will depend on whether hers is more just, a discreet ornament or like a bear trap. If it's an enormous Lily Allen style hoop earring.
But if it's a stud, then I think actually in a way you could leave it as a surprise.
I suppose you might need to be careful if you're using condoms, which of course new sexual partner you should in
Yes,
case it
doesn't
tears
rupture.
them.
Yeah, that's true. Better to make him aware, isn't it?
He might find it a tempting thing actually, because you don't have that just for the look of it, do you? You have that because of the stimulation. He might think, a lady who likes stimulation, that must mean she's up for it.
I do think the last thing I need is constant sexual stimulation. I mean, it's bad enough anyway being a man and just being constantly distracted by sexual images.
If anything, you need a piercing just to give you a bit of time off.
I need a piercing in my brain just so that I can think about other stuff occasionally.
Don't say that, because a fence post will fall through your window at night.
No, but I do. In one way, I am sort of looking forward to getting to my 60s and not being able to get a boner anymore, just so I can have a bit more time.
To read and do,
Yeah.
and do the gardening.
A little bit, though. I would love to get through Austin, but I'm never going to do it at the moment.
Yeah, but you'd find those Bennett sisters all too sexy.
They're quite hot.
Here is another question about unexpected items on the genitals.
Brilliant.
It's from Anonymous in Manchester, who says, I have a medium-sized lump on my penis. Ollie, answer me this. What should I do? Charge tourists tuppence to look at it.
Nothing. I'd do nothing. Sounds absolutely fine. I wouldn't worry about it. And if your penis drops off, then you'll know that you should have done something sooner. But otherwise, if I were you, I'd just send a question about it to a comedy podcast. That's obviously the best route, isn't it?
Also, what's your definition of medium? Is it just smaller than some of the lumps on your penis, but bigger than other ones? Is it like a medium-sized mountain, like Scaffold Pike?
I think the only wise advice is for us to say that you should go to your doctor. But of course, I mean, it might be nothing to worry about at all, but you won't know that until you go to the doctor rather than asking us.
Apparently, the probability is that most penile lumps will be nothing to worry about. They might just be a harmless cyst or, a little swollen gland.
Yeah, the dick equivalent of a lymph node.
Indeed.
I've got a lymph node, I think. I haven't been to the doctor, being hypocritical here. I've got a tiny little lump here on the back of my ear.
Oh, that's fatal.
Oh, I get them all the time.
Yeah.
Fatal.
But it kind of... At one point, I panicked because it was growing. And now I've noticed that it's shrunk again. So I think it's glandular, isn't it? But it feels like a lump. Feels like a little bump on my skeleton. But
just go. I mean, why on earth do people ask us for medical advice before going to see their GP, or at least going to the genito-urinary medicine clinic?
Or at least sending it to Channel 4's Embarrassing Bodies.
Good point.
It's obviously the place to send all of your important medical information because it's so much less embarrassing than going to a doctor who's medically trained.
Are you suggesting that the doctor on there is not medically trained?
No, what I'm saying is that you only see a medically trained doctor when you go to a doctor rather than 1 million people who are laughing at your cock.
I've got the question.
Then email your question to answer me this podcast at googlemail.com.
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 So, retrospectors, what historical events are we ticking off on this week's run of Today in History?
On Monday, the anniversary of the day Ozzy Osbourne and a bat came face to face on stage.
On Tuesday, we go back to the future with a potted history of the DeLorean.
On Wednesday, why is the Pope guarded by those guys in floofy hats?
On Thursday, how the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ended up in Cleveland.
And on Friday, was Henry VIII really an asshole, or was it just the result of a jousting accident?
We discuss this and more on Today in History with the Retrospectors. 10 minutes each weekday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Here's a question from Liu, who says, when I go swimming, I just want to swim.
All right.
Oh, Liu, please will you do aqua aerobics? No! Says Liu, the other attractions at the pool hold little interest for me.
Well, that obviously is a man who has never encountered the Letchworth wave machine.
Oh my god.
What a machine.
And even a diving board, that can be fun.
Yeah, or a water slide.
Or one of those inflatable dolphins that you can ride around on.
Let's not get carried away.
Sorry.
Because he's been very specific on the fact that the other attractions... No interest.
Little
Inflatables,
interest.
forget it. Waste of time. But I think wave machine does qualify.
Liu continues, I have noticed, however, that whenever they switch the jacuzzi on, women of all ages make a beeline for it. Not men. Just women.
And Ollie Mann.
Yeah, because you're making that porno in there at the Letchworth jacuzzi.
Love a jacuzzi.
Oh, yes.
What's not to like about a jacuzzi apart from the floating body fluids that have been left there by the previous incumbent?
Well, maybe you need to tell you what there is to like about a jacuzzi.
Right, okay.
Because he's coming from the opposite end of the jacuzzi-loving spectrum.
Well, I'm not sure I do want to tell him because I don't want the jacuzzi full of men. I like all the women in there just for me.
You and all your honeys. Liu says, the only men who go there seem to have been dragged in by their wives or girlfriends.
No, quite the contrary. Can't get my girlfriend to go in the jacuzzi with me. She gets too hot.
She is too hot. She's a hottie.
Yeah, that must be why.
Whenever I get dragged into it by the missus, I would just sit there bored for 10 minutes, looking forward to being able to get back in the main pool and do some swimming again.
Oh, he likes swimming, doesn't he?
He has little interest in the other things.
A man who's obviously never put his cock up against the jet streams.
Ollie, answer me this. Is there a physiological explanation for the gender-based difference in the attraction of a jacuzzi? Do women find it particularly invigorating or stimulating to sit on a bubble generator?
Well, you can answer that better than me, Helen.
Well, I remember them not being on the seat, but being sort of in the small of your back.
Yeah.
And that is fun.
Yeah. Well, he's going beyond fun, though, isn't he?
It's not sexy fun, it's just fun.
Well, you say that, and I'm sure you're right. I can't speak for you.
I have no sexual feelings.
No, but what I was going to say is, women are known to have...
no sexual feelings.
Female orgasm is a myth.
Is this what you've explained to Martin? Known to have more sexual nerves in more places than men.
Well, maybe they're just not so concentrated in one sexual place.
Correct. So
Right.
whereas for a man to get off on it, he really would have to place his erect penis up against a jet stream. A woman, I think it's reasonable to say some women, perhaps some that are more sensitive than others, might feel more of an erotic sensation by being stimulated by bubble jets around their body than men might.
Maybe. I don't know how erotic it is to go in a jacuzzi that is in a leisure centre.
Well, this is the thing. Council Leisure Centre.
It's like soup full of Ming.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
It's like a frappuccino of other people's pubes. And the temperature of it is a breeding ground for germs. However, I wonder whether it's not even a physiological or sexual thing to account for the lack of men. But maybe it's just that a lot of men feel a bit self-conscious about going into a jacuzzi that's full of women.
I think that's right. Because if you go to one of the gyms, and this doesn't happen so much in council gyms, but in private ones, go to one of those health clubs where it's luxurious enough that each gender in their own changing room has their own sauna, steam room and jacuzzi.
Wow.
Very often the jacuzzi in those places will have men in it, in the men changing rooms, won't it? Whereas perhaps in the mixed, as you're right, perhaps in the mixed gender environment, men see the women and they think, oh, that's not for me. That's the thing for people who have their nails done and come to the spa to be treated. It's not for me. Big physical exercise me.
Or they think, I better not go in there in case I inadvertently sexually harass a woman just by being there. Maybe she'll mistake the jet of bubbles for me trying to touch her.
Actually, there is that thing when you're on holiday and you're in a hotel that's got a hot tub, when obviously you're going to use it. I mean, you'd be mad to see a hot tub and not use it. But you get that thing where there's a couple in there before you get in. Or, actually, it's happened to me in January. I was in a hotel where there was a man playing with his little girl. Like a 7-year-old girl, and they were playing with like a football.
Oh, that's sweet.
And I was like, I really want to use the hot tub, but I feel a bit weird getting into the hot tub with a little girl, which is mad because that's all in my head. But I was thinking, what are they going to think of me if I get in the jacuzzi with the little girl and start talking to them?
Well, it depends what you're saying to them. If you said, how much for the girl, then I can understand that they would not be happy.
No, so I wasn't really being clear. The man wasn't in the jacuzzi. So the father was standing by the jacuzzi. The little girl was in it, throwing the ball to him.
Well, I think
I was getting in the water with his little girl.
Yeah, but I think it'd be okay if you were on the far side. Maybe even better if you had headphones on or something.
Right, so I shouldn't have got in by thrusting my leg in front of her face. That was the wrong way.
You shouldn't have sat on her until she stopped moving. When Martin was having his stag do, his best man's original plan was for everybody to go to a Turkish bath.
It was a lovely plan.
Yes, but for Martin to be almost nude with 20 of his dearest friends seemed a little bit rich.
Just cutting straight to the point of a stag do, isn't it?
Daisy chain.
So, yeah, maybe this is the answer to Lou's question to an extent, is that clearly the sexual element of the hot tub is surely exemplified nowhere better than in the sex party, the swingers party. Very often, I know this is a stereotype, but very often centred around the hot tub. The hot tub is there as a central point because it's a place where you have to take your clothes off to get in. And then you have a few drinks and then they go to your head because of the bubbles and the heat. And then suddenly before you know it, oh, you're having a three-way with Janice.
You seem to know a lot about sex parties.
Well, because as you know, Helen, I'm moving house soon.
Hopefully.
I did a lot of research into the area, as one does. You do your landfill search, you do your environmental search.
Sex party
Wait,
research.
has it got pampas grass?
And, well, I did a Google to find out where my local swimming pool was. And what came up was a sex party website.
What?
There's a house up the road from where we're moving where it's, as far as I can work out, this is their main source of income. It's a 7-day-a-week swingers party operation.
7 days a week?
Yeah.
Not even one day to rest and clean up?
I don't think so.
God, they must get through a lot of cheese and pineapple on sticks.
Well, they're constantly hosing the place down.
Well, so they've got a swimming pool, they've got a sauna, and they've got a hot tub.
So can you go there just to use the sauna for your back?
No.
You have to put out.
And what's brilliant is they actually have these TripAdvisor-style reviews saying things like, Richard's cider apple crumble was absolutely delicious looking, but we'd been to Nando's before we arrived, so we had no room.
And you can't fuck on a full stomach.
Exactly. It's like, you would think they were running a Pizza Express rather than a sex dungeon.
It's not a dungeon if it's above ground, is it? It sounds quite airy.
So do you think you might pop round? Because you're going to be living in the burbs, and there's not going to be as much entertainment around you, not so many theatres and cinemas.
Yeah. No, I don't think I will, because I think I'm too young. No offence to the people if they're listening, but judging by the photos on the website, I'm 20 years too young to be part of their parties. So come back to me in 20 years with that, and we'll see. If I can't afford my own hot tub by then, I might be going around to use theirs.
Oh, fine.
Whatever the consequences.
I will have sex, but as long as you let me sit in the hot tub.
What can
thing you buy for $7.99 on iTunes, that seems worth it.
Kesh's new LP.
Churchill's biography.
Or an app that does jack shit.
For the same sum,
you can get all the fun of 5 hours of our old stuff.
We're selling the first 3 years of Answer Me This in iTunes.
Most of it is good, just a little bit is guff.
Go to answermethispodcast.com/classic and click the link.
And with your money we'll swaddle ourselves in nothing but the finest mink.
Finest mink, and gold shoes, and diamond hats, but normal pants.
Listeners, it is our weekly time of reminding you that if you want to leave a question in your own voice, then please give us a call on this number.
02081235877.
Or Skype Answer Me This. Let's find out who's done that this week.
Hey Helen Ollie, it's Daniel from Dublin. I've just been on Facebook and a post has come up on my newsfeed saying that bread is actually dangerous for ducks. It can cause things like botulism and something else called angel wing, apparently. So please, for the good of my conscience as a young kid, when I was feeding ducks bread as a little kid, was I actually killing them? Or is this just some kind of urban myth? So Hannah, answer me this. Is bread dangerous for ducks?
Who killed all the ducks? Who killed all the ducks? Daniel from Dublin, he killed all the ducks with bread.
Who let the ducks die? Who?
Daniel.
Quack, Daniel.
Yeah, it's really bad for ducks.
Is it really?
Yeah, I was shocked. Daniel, I'm sorry to have ruined your childhood retrospectively. When they eat human food, their organs become engorged and fatty, and that can give them heart disease, liver problems, other health complications. Bread can get compacted in their crops, and apparently bread-impacted crop is a known duck disease.
Well, impacted in their crops?
I assume the crop is like the kinky neck that they have.
But they do always have those signs, don't they? Don't feed the ducks in public places. And I assume that was because it might poison the water.
That can happen too.
Yeah.
And also your mouldy bread mouldering around can harbour botulism, and it can cause pests to proliferate in the duck pond. All these things can happen.
Guess you get rats going in for a swim, don't you, if you've got too much bread in there?
That's right. And they harbour disease, and it also reduces their ability to learn how to source food for themselves.
Okay.
And they can overeat, because you might think, well, I'm just giving them a little bit of bread. How many other people are thinking
That's
the
the problem.
same?
Yeah, a little bit of bread's probably all right, isn't it, being honest? It's like cats with milk. You're not supposed to feed cats milk, but everyone knows a bit of milk goes down lovely with a cat, but you just don't, little drop. What you don't want is all the neighbours feeding the cat milk, because then you get a horrible stream of diarrhoea following it around. So what's the thing to feed them? Bird feed, I guess.
Cheerios, which seems weird because they've got a lot of sugar in. Grapes, cut in half. Defrosted frozen peas. Kale. Romaine lettuce, but not iceberg lettuce.
It's too big, isn't it?
Well, also, it's not that flavoursome. Ducks prefer a less crisp
It's
lettuce.
interesting, isn't it? You never see old women go down with a bag of mixed salad.
You might as well beat them to death with that stale bread for all the good you're doing them. Well, here is another question of food from Richard from Wickham, who says, Ollie, answer me this. Is it acceptable to eat crisps in the quiet zones of trains?
Yes, I would say yes.
It depends, I suppose, how lustily you're eating them. If you're just eating them at normal volume, I don't think anyone could deny that that's acceptable.
I think at any volume, unless you're amplifying it with the aid of a microphone.
If you're going crunch, crunch, yum, 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 me and my crisps.
Yeah, because otherwise the sound of eating any crisp, even a Pringle or something, is not going to be louder than the accumulative noise of the 100-mile-an-hour carriage you're in. Yeah. Do you frequent the quiet carriage as a rule?
I've been known to dabble, and I don't notice it being significantly quieter. I mean, sometimes when somebody is having a mobile phone conversation, someone else will tut.
I think that's
but that is in itself a noise.
But that is that's true. But it is just, that's the rule, isn't it? You're allowed to tut. Like you might not want to intervene usually by telling someone to send their phone, but if you're in the mobile phone free zone, you can point at the sign and tut.
Yeah.
That is what you are buying.
I would love it if trains had a carriage where you were free of other people's boring as shit anecdotes. That they were either telling somebody else or they were on the phone telling, because that is something that's really hard to tune out.
It is. And actually you can't, it's compelling, isn't it? Even if the person isn't interesting. Or actually, even if the person is interesting, you don't necessarily want to hear it. I was behind Radio 1 film critic James King once on the Channel Tunnel, all the way from Paris.
Oh, blimey.
And, during that 3-hour journey, he was on a mobile phone in the seat in front of me. And on the one hand, I was thinking, I couldn't shut down the part of my brain that was thinking, ooh, it's James King. But at the same time, he was always saying interesting things.
Is that the voice of your internal monologue, Ollie?
That's right, yeah. Whenever I come into contact with minor league celebrities, that's right, yeah. Ooh, someone that used to be a Big Brother. And I thought, right, well, he might be talking to someone famous. He might be talking to Edith Bowman.
Ooh.
Yeah, ooh. But
Bowman chat.
But it was boring. What he was saying was boring. It was all about what he was going to do that weekend, where he'd been, what Paris was like. And I was like, I'm trying to read. and I don't want you talking at me. But you can't do anything if you're not in the quiet carriage.
Rebecca from Letchworth. Helen and Ollie and Martin the Soundman, answer me this. What is the difference between seals and sea lions?
Well, they are subsects of the same set in the Venn diagram of beasts.
I don't doubt it.
They're both pinnipeds, as are walruses, which means fin-footed mammals. But sea lions are much louder than seals, because you remember when you see sea lions like in San Francisco or a lot down the Californian coast, they're just...
It is great to watch them, though. They're funny because they have little fights with each other over a bit of rock in the sun. You're like, the whole coastline is rock in the sun. What's the fight about?
That's the story of humankind, Ollie. They're not so different from us.
I guess.
What is so magnificent as well about watching the pinnipeds is they're so graceful in water and so incredibly ungainly on dry land.
Yeah.
So
they can really move in the sea, can't they?
So when you see the sea lions, they're sort of yomping over each other. But sea lions, another difference between seals and sea lions can bend their tail fin underneath them to propel them, whereas seals they stick theirs straight out and kind of drag themselves along. But the main identifiable difference...
There better be one, Helen, because so far my inner nutkins would not be able to identify one from the other from your description alone.
Okay, well then you won't be able to identify them for the fact that sea lions' whiskers are smooth and seals are crimped.
I'm not getting that close.
Okay,
what's the fact? What can help me here?
Seals have little holes for ears, and sea lions have ear flaps.
Nice.
And
it's all about the flaps. Just looking for the flaps. Now I know.
Yeah.
Lion
ear flaps. But then my problem would be remembering which one had the holes and which one had the flaps.
Well, I'd think of a lion and a big flap. I'd think of a big cat flap with a lion in it.
Oh, that's a good mnemonic. Well done.
Need a flap for a lion.
Well, if we've learned nothing else today, lion flaps.
How many social networks are you on? Vivo, Friendster, Path, YouPorn, MySpace, Ping, and Google Buzz. If you want to be our pal, go to this URL: facebook.com/answer me this, or twitter.com/Helen and Dolly. But please don't follow us in real life.
Here's a question from Amy from York, who says, I recently broke up with my boyfriend of about a year.
Sorry, Amy.
For Christmas, well, he might have been a dick.
Well, it's still hard to break up with a dick, because you think, what did I waste that year on a dick for?
Yeah, that's true, yeah. Okay, I'm sorry that you might be thinking that.
Yeah, I mean, initially I was dickmatised, but once that wore off, what's the excuse? Could have got out in 3 months.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm sorry, Amy.
Yeah, all
whatever
right.
the scenario.
Yeah, you've been dicked. For Christmas, she continues, I bought him 2 tickets to see Bruce Springsteen at Wembley in June, as he's a massive fan.
That's nice of you.
That is nice. Although it will probably rain on him throughout the concert, being June in UK, so in a way, you're getting him back as well. We had an amicable-ish breakup, continues Amy, but have decided not to be friends.
Fair enough.
That's very mature, isn't it?
Yes.
To actually be able to say in words like that in a printed email, we've decided not to be friends. Not I hate him.
No.
We've decided. So Helen, answer me this. Would it be weird if I asked him to come with me to the gig? I know how much he wants to go, and I don't really want to miss out either. By the way, if you've got him a Christmas present...
Then it's he who should decide who gets to go with him.
Yeah, I mean, I know you've broken up, so maybe then the tickets didn't arrive until just now, and you paid for them. But, I mean, that's the Christmas present is not the voucher in the card saying, I'm going to give you some tickets. It is the tickets.
Yeah. If he'd bought them for you, and therefore it was your decision whom to go with, what would you feel, Amy? You would probably feel like it was your decision whom to go with, so these are his tickets.
I think the opposite, yeah. No, if it were me and I'd been bought the tickets, I would think these are quite expensive, and my ex-girlfriend probably would rather have them herself, or my ex-wife would rather have them herself.
But the statute of limitations is, it was a Christmas present.
Yeah.
It's gone Christmas, it's June.
It's like for your birthday last year, Martin, when I got you that day's owling.
Yeah.
And then if we'd split up, you wouldn't have thought, well, Helen had better go on the owling.
But that's different. That was a very specific experience to me.
No, I don't think so. Owls are your Springsteen, Martin.
Yes.
Yeah. The fact that Amy quite likes him as well is irrelevant. Anyway, she continues, I know how much he wants to go, and I don't really want to miss out either. I don't have any other friends who are Springsteen fans, as I'm 20 and therefore not exactly in the Bruce demographic. If I do this, how can I ask him without making it sound like a ploy to get him back?
Well,
I don't think it sounds like that. I'm aware that my friends who are still in the he's a dick phase will kill me if I tell them I'm thinking of giving his ticket to him.
They won't. Firstly, it's none of their business. Don't bother telling them. Secondly, they're probably saying he's a dick because you've broken up with him, and that's what friends do.
Yeah, you have to say that,
It's just
don't
impulse. I mean, he was probably fine for you to have gone out with him.
You're right, actually.
Well, unless he's Chris Brown.
You're right, and actually, perversely, they'd probably prefer it if you gave them both to him.
Yes,
because then
exactly.
you wouldn't have to be involved at all.
Yeah, and it shows that you don't have any particular longing to go with him if you give him both the tickets.
Bottom line, it's a nice evening, but it's not that romantic, is it? I mean, go and see Bruce Springsteen with someone and it will lead to no sex at all.
Yeah.
Absolutely fine.
It's one night of
It's
your
Bruce
life.
bloody Springsteen. You know what I mean? He'll probably die in your lifetime, and then you'll think, oh, I had an opportunity to see him once and I missed it.
I wish I hadn't been so silly and second-guessed myself so much.
Exactly.
Well, listeners, it is time to draw this episode to a close. But if you want to draw next week's episode to an open... That's not really an expression, but let's make it one.
I like it. Yeah, I like it. Why not?
Then you
Draw it back like a curtain.
We can only fling open the curtains of next week's episode if you send us a question via email, phone or Skype, and all of our contact details are very clearly denoted on our website, answermethispodcast.com.
Where also this week you will find links to Helen's new podcast.
I'm cheating on this podcast with another podcast.
But not another co-podcaster, so I can support this.
Yeah, that's right.
There's no men in this.
Well, there will be token men in this
All right.
podcast. I'm making a podcast called Sound Women, which is about women in the radio industry, which is quite sexist. And anyway, the first episode is out.
The radio industry is sexist, not the podcast.
No, the podcast
is anti-sexist.
Well, it's kind of sexist because there aren't any men in the first episode, but it's positive discrimination. But anyway, in the first episode, I interview Lauren Laverne.
It's a good interview, I can say impartially. I mean, I do know you, obviously.
And you know Lauren.
And I know Lauren Laverne.
You used to work with her.
But nonetheless, I can say impartially as a listener that I enjoyed it. And you don't have to be a woman to listen to it, even though it is aimed at women who want to get into the radio industry. But men can listen to it too.
Yes, as long as they don't repress anybody by doing so. So that's at soundcloud.com/soundwomen.
Another podcast you should be subscribed to, by the way, is the Ian Collins Wants a Word podcast.
Ian Collins,
friend of the show, previous guest on the show, and we are again guests on his show this week.
Yes.
So if you subscribe to Ian Collins Wants a Word on all the usual pod places, then we're on that this week. And actually, whilst we're talking about podcasts that you should subscribe to, we don't mention this enough. We are every week on the Let's Talk About Tech podcast from the BBC. Every week, both of us talking about the week online with Chris Smooth Voice Warburton.
Oh, it's like
voice like melted butter Warburton.
I think it's more a voice like hot Bovril.
Yes, I think that's fair. So there you go, 3 podcasts to check out. And since we have promoted 3 of our own podcasts with grim inevitability, we give Martin the opportunity to mention his briefly.
Strap in.
Oh, which one?
Choose.
I'm going to plug Brain Train.
Drain Brain. It's a
Drain
podcast
Brain.
about the sewage industry. Every week, Martin
really
talking
good.
about different types of poo you can see floating past
Scat
you in the drains in the street.
Very toilet heavy.
No, it's called what? Brain Train.
Brain Train. It's the idea is that every week an expert asks another expert about something they don't know anything about. So,
Okay, so it's not like this podcast where stupid people ask stupid people questions.
Well, no, it's more like I'm a physicist. Let's say I want to know all about Shakespeare. I get a Shakespeare scholar and ask them about that, and the Shakespeare scholar wants to know all about fireflies. So we get in a biologist, and they have this really cool conversations.
That sounds fun.
That sounds good.
Where can people get that, Martin?
Braintrainpodcast.com.
So, listeners, that is an awful lot of free entertainment for you. So we expect you to be very, very cheerful and entertained when you return next week for the next Answer Me This.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.